Hi everyone, in this lesson 4.1 we're going to look at the additive, multiplicative, and ciphered systems of numeration. Before we look at those systems, let's look at a couple vocabulary words that are going to be important. You've all heard of the word number before. Number is just a quantity and it answers the question how many. And in some primitive societies, they used tally systems. They would put scratch marks on stones or trees or in the soil to count livestock and agriculture or whatever needed to be counted at that time. A numeral is a symbol, so they would use symbols such as the tally marks, and then their symbols advanced a little bit more and looked like this. Or you're familiar with the number 10, that's also a numeral, and it's used to represent the number 10. So in other words, we think a number and we write a numeral. A system of numeration consists of a set of numerals and a rule for combining the numerals to represent the numbers. The system of numeration that we use is called the Hindu-Arabic system. It's important to know that you don't need to memorize all the symbols. You will be given these in class, but you should understand the principles behind them and how to use them. So let's first look at the additive system. The additive system is one where the number is represented by a particular set of numerals is the sum of the values of those numerals, right? So the word additive means to add or to sum. One of the first additive systems dates back to 3000 BC, and that was the Egyptian hieroglyphic system. The Egyptians used symbols that represented powers of 10. So 10 to the 0, which equals 1. Anything to the 0 power is 1. 10 to the first is 10, 10 squared, and so on. So here's some of the Egyptian numerals that were used, and those numerals represented the Hindu-Arabic numerals that we're familiar with now. So here's an example. We want to write this hieroglyphic as a Hindu-Arabic numeral. So if I use the chart, here I can see that I have 2 pointing fingers, and those represent 10,000. And remember, this is an additive system, so we're going to add. And then I see these scrolls, and there's 4 of them, and they represent 100. And then I see that there's this heel bone or an arch, which represents 10. And then I've got those little sticks there, which are staffs or vertical strokes, and those represent 1. And there's 5 of them. And now if I add all of this up, I've got 10,000 plus 10,000, which is 20,000. I have 4 hundredths, so that's 400 plus 10, and then plus 5 more. 10 plus 5, 15. So we have 20,415. Going backwards, I'm going to take the Hindu-Arabic numeral and express it as an Egyptian numeral, so I would need to write in hieroglyphics. So this numeral here is 1,203,462. So what I need to do is start with the millions, which would be, they call it the astonished person, right? It looks like someone that's astonished or surprised. And that's going to be my 1 million. Then I've got 203,000. So 200,000. So I'm going to need to use the tadpole, the fish, 2 of them, to represent the 200,000. So that's 200,000. But we have 203,000. So now I need to use 3 of these lotus flowers to represent the 3,000 part. And then I've got 462 So 400, I need to look at the hundreds, which are the scrolls. Okay, I need 4 of them. And then I have 62. So 60, I need 6 of these heel bones that represent 10. And then I've got 2. So that's the staffs. So as you can see, a really large number like 1,203,462 would take a long time to write. So as civilizations advanced, we became a little bit more efficient in representing our numbers with certain numerals. For the check your understanding, you can try these on your own. And then if you have questions, you can always ask in class. So we were adding when using the additive system. And we didn't really subtract. Subtraction is just accomplished when you remove symbols. Okay, when we have multiplication and division, the process is a little bit more difficult. It's called duplication and mediation. And we will look at that in section 4.5. Okay, what is interesting though is the Egyptians didn't have a symbol for 0, but they did have an understanding of fractions. So obviously that was a problem, not having a number to represent 0. So, again, as these systems advanced, we included 0 into that system. Okay, let's look at another additive system, which you're probably familiar with. It's the Roman numerals. And here we have the Roman numerals from 1 to 1,000. Okay, you've probably seen these in books when they put copyright dates or even on clocks and in buildings. When working with Roman numerals, we always work from left to right. We add each numeral unless its value is smaller than the value of the numeral to its right. And then in that case, we subtract. Okay, so we're going to see that here in the examples coming up. So in this first Roman numeral, we want to write this as Hindu Arabic numerals. So we've got M, which is 1,000, and then D, which is 500, C, which is 100, L is 50, X is 10, V is 5, and 2, we've got the 2 sticks there, which represent the 1s, so that's 2. There's no instance there where a smaller value is to the left of that numeral. So we don't need to do any subtracting. We're just going to add straight across. So we've got 1,000 for M plus D, which is 500. C is 100, and there's 3 of them. And L is 50. X is 10. V is 5. And then you've got 1 plus 1 at the end. So now we know that this is going to be 1,000, and then we've got the part that's in the hundreds. So I'm going to combine all of them into one number. 50 plus, or 500 plus 100 plus 100 plus 100 is 800. So we know we have 1,800. And then I have the tens, which is going to be 50 plus 10. So that's 60. And then we have our single digits, our ones digits, 5 plus 1 plus 1, which gives us 6. So it's 7. So it's 1,867. Now in number 2, if you notice, C comes before M. And C is 100 and M is 1,000. So when that occurs, we have to subtract, right? So I'm referring here, when we add each numeral unless its value is smaller than the value of the numeral to its right. So because C is 100 and M is 1,000, C is smaller than the numeral to its right. So we need to subtract those. So really what I'm going to do is I'm going to do M, which is 1,000, minus C, which is 100. And then I can keep going forward. So I've got LX. So L is 50, X is 10. And then I've got IV. So again, it occurs where I is 1, V is 5. When the number on the left is smaller than the one on the right, we need to subtract. So I'm going to subtract 5 minus 1. So 1,000 minus 100 gives me 900. 50 plus 10 gives me 60. And 5 minus 1 is 4. So it's 964. Something important to note here is that if you ever see a bar over the symbol, so in this case, like a bar over V, V stands for 5. What you do is you multiply that number by 1,000. Okay, so now we're going to go backwards. We're going to write the following as Roman numerals. Okay, so we have them written as Hindu Arabic, and we're going to write them as Roman numerals. So 439. I'm going to kind of split this up into the hundreds, the tens, and then the ones. And 400 would just be, I don't have a symbol for 400, and we only repeat 3 times at most. So in other words, I is 3, but if I wanted to write 4, I wouldn't put I. I would do IV. So V is 5 minus 1, which is 4. So the same is true of 400. If you look at your table, there is no symbol for 400, but there is a symbol for 500. If I want to write 400, I need to put 500 minus 100. So I'm going to have C and then D. Remember, when the number on the left is smaller than the one on the right, you subtract them. So it's going to be CD. And then I've got 30, so that's going to be 30 is XXX, 10 plus 10 plus 10. And then there is no symbol for 9, but I can do 10 minus 1, which will give me IX. So what I did here was I did 500 minus 100. That's the CD. And then 30 was just 10 plus 10 plus 10. And then 9 I got from doing 10 minus 1. And remember, in order to subtract, I need to put the smaller numeral on the left. In number 2, we've got 12,345. Okay, so if you look at the table, it stops at 1,000. So how do I do 12,000? Well, what I need to do, remember, is write the number 12 and then put a horizontal bar above it to show that it's going to be multiplied by 1,000. So 12 is X10II, and then put the bar over it. So that means 12 times 1,000. Then I've got 300, so that's going to be C. And then I've got 45, okay? So I have 40, which would be XL, so 50 minus 10, and then 5. Okay, so this one was 12 times 1,000, okay? And the 1,000 is represented, the multiplying by 1,000 is represented by the vertical bar, plus 300, plus 40, plus 5. Okay, now we're going to go backwards. We're going to write the following Roman numerals as Hindu Arabic numerals. So here we have XXX, which is 30. Oh, and these are for you to try. So I'm going to let you try these on your own. And then if you have any questions, you can always ask me in class. Sorry, I got carried away and started to work those out. Okay, next let's look at the multiplicative system. So you can probably tell here that in the word multiplicative, you have the word multiply. So there's going to be some multiplying going on here. And it is very similar to, it's more similar to our Hindu Arabic system, okay? So if we wanted to express the number 642 as a multiplicative system, we would express it this way, okay? So notice that there's no signs used. So what do you think the rule is to get that number 642? How would you get 642 from here? You can always pause the video and try to think about it, and then unpause it when you're ready. So what happens is you multiply the top number times the bottom, right? So this would be 6 times 100. This would be 4 times 10. And then this is just the number 2. And then you're just going to add up. You would get 600 plus 40 plus 2, which gives you the 642. Okay. The traditional Chinese system is an example of the multiplicative system. Okay, but this is not the same system that they use today. Okay, but there's your chart with your symbols on it. We usually, when we're writing Chinese numerals, we express them vertically up and down. The numeral on top will usually be from the numbers 1 to 9 inclusive, which is to be multiplied by a power of 10 below it. Okay, so here we've got 2 and then times 10. So it's written vertically as this system is. So if I want to express 538 as a Chinese numeral, right, I need to think about, okay, 538 is made up of 500 plus 30 plus 8. 500 is 5 times 100. 30 is 3 times 10, and then we just have 8. So if I look at my chart, I need to put all this together. Okay, so first I need the number 5. So 5 looks kind of like this. And then times 100, right? So 100 would go underneath that. Okay, so that's your 5 times 100. And then I've got 30. So 30 is 3 times 10. So I need 3, and then I need the 10. So I've got the 3, and then the 10. And then you have 8. So the number 8 is right here. They look like peppers, kind of. So 8 goes something like that. Okay, and there you go. And that's the number 538. Here's some special cases that you need to consider when you're writing Chinese numerals. When you write a numeral between 11 and 19, it's not necessary to include the 1 before the 10. So for example, 18 would be written like this. Okay, so if you go back up and look at the chart, right, you've got your symbols for 10 and 8. So 10 plus 8, right? We know that that's just 18. So that's the number 10, that's the number 8. Okay, rather than putting a 1, a 10, and an 8. And when more than one consecutive 0 occurs, except at the end of a numeral, you don't need to write a 0, but only once for 2 or 3 consecutive zeros. Zeros are not included at the end of numerals. So here's some examples of that, right? When you have a number like, let's say, 4006, okay? They're only writing the 0 one time, even though there's 2 zeros here, okay? Now, for 4600, right, you don't need to include the zeros because you have 4000 and then 600. So we only need to worry about it when it's in between the 2 other numerals other than 0. Okay, so let's take a look here. How would we write 7080 in Chinese numerals? So I need to break this up, right? I have 7,000 and then plus 80. So I'm missing the hundreds, in other words, right? This is really 7 times 1,000 plus 0 times 100 plus 80, which would be 8 times 10. Okay, so there is no 100 really there. So using my symbols, it's going to look something like this. So that part represents the 7 times 1,000. And then good luck writing the 0. It's pretty intricate. Just do your best. To me, it looks like a face, kind of. So that's the 0 times the 100. And then remember, 8 looks like the peppers, right? So that's 8 And then the 10 kind of looks like the plus sign. So that's your 8 times 10. So that's how you would express 7,080. Okay, if you look at number 2, we've got the same digits except the zeros now occur between the 7 and the 8. So remember, the rule is you don't need to write the 0 2 times. You only have to put it 1 time. Okay, so here you have 7,008, right? So it's 7 times 1,000, it's 0 times 100, it's 0 times 10, and then it's 8. So there's no hundreds and no 10 spots. So again, you're going to have the 7 times 1,000, and then you don't have a 0 for the hundreds or the tens, so we only have to write that symbol 1 time. I'm going to cheat here and copy this and paste it. Okay, so there's my 0, which represents the 0 times the 100 and the 0 times the 10. And then the 8, which is the kind of peppers. Okay, and then that's how you would write 7,008. And you might wonder, well, how are you supposed to know there's 2 zeros in between there? Well, if you have a number, right, that's 4 places, you know this is the ones, this is the tens, this is the hundreds, and this is the thousands. So you know 7 is in the thousands and 8's in the ones. There's nothing in the middle. So you would know just by looking at it that there would have to be 2 zeros in between there. Okay, you can practice with those 2 problems there, and then we're going to look at ciphered systems, our last type of numeration system. A ciphered numeration system is one where there are numerals for numbers up to and including the base and for the multiples of the base. The numbers represented by a particular set of numerals is the sum of the values of the numerals. Okay, so here we're going to look at the Greek letters, and this is a ciphered numeration system that was developed in about 3000 BC. It's called the Ionic Greek system. Okay, there are other ciphered systems as well. Okay, but we're going to look at this one. So we know that we can write the number 45, for example, as 40 plus 5, as we've been seeing. But in the Greek system, we don't use the plus sign. We would use the symbol for 40, which is mu, and then the symbol for 5, which is epsilon. Okay, and you would write those together. When you have the Greek symbol iota placed to the top left of the numeral, that represents the numeral being multiplied by 1,000. So remember back in Roman numerals, when you wanted to multiply by 1,000, you put a horizontal line over the letter. So if I wanted to write 5,000, I would just put the symbol for 5, which is V, and then put a line on top of it, which means multiply by 1,000. So here they just came up with a different system where they used the Greek symbol iota to the top left. Okay, so here we're going to write this Greek symbol as a Hindu-Arabic numeral. So I need to find that, which is the Greek symbol tau. Okay, and tau is right here, which is 300. And then I've got the symbol for pi, which should be familiar to everybody, and that is for 80. And then epsilon, which is going to come up quite a bit, that's the number 5. So 300 plus 80 plus 5 is the number 385. Okay, now going backwards, let's take this number here that's Hindu-Arabic and write it as an Ionic Greek numeral. So we know that we have 1,654. Okay, so the Greek symbol for 1,000, for that one, remember that you would take the symbol for alpha, right? And alpha is 1. And then I'm just going to put the iota symbol above it. And that's going to tell me I'm multiplying that by 1,000 because there is no symbol for 1,000. So that's 1 times 1,000. And then I have 600, right? 600 is the Greek symbol. It's pronounced chi. It's a hard K. It looks like a fancy X. And then 50 is nu, so it looks like a kind of like a cursive V. And then the 4 is the Greek symbol delta. And it kind of has a hook on it. And that's it. Thanks everyone. If you have any questions, please let me know. Have a good day.